Here we go. Mr. Jason, how you doing today?
Good, sir. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming in.
Yes, sir.
You're running for the State Senate, District 5.
Yes, sir. Florida State Senate.
That's right. Tell us a little bit about what you're running for and why you're running it, what issues you see.
Well, I was county commissioner for 8 years in Dixie County, and I thought in my mind, I wanted to keep doing that, but I didn't have a piece about running again for a third time. But me and my wife have been praying, looking for another opportunity, and this seems like it came open and things just lined up, man. It's been great.
Well, let me ask you something. You was on the board in Cross City the same time I was on the board in Columbia County.
Yes, sir.
So, did you ever go to legislative day they had in Tallahassee?
Yes,
I know
I did.
you did.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So, one of the things I noticed, and I was going to see if you picked up on this, is that when you went to legislative day and you talking to the legislators,
Yes, sir.
I could always tell the ones who never dealt at the local level, and they never seemed to be tuned in to me.
Right. Yeah, they on a different wavelength.
Did you pick up on that?
I did, and that's kind of my whole platform. It's about staying in touch with the people. Lord willing, we get the job. That's the two main things, is staying in touch with the people. And then the second part too is having the backbone to stand up for what's right, because these other people, and I'm sure in Tallahassee, you're gonna have to go against the grain to stand up for the small town North Florida that we'll be representing.
Do you feel like you see holes in the way the people here are being represented?
Well, we got some good representation. I mean, I like Chuck Brandon. I think he's a good man. I can't knock him. But your current state senator, Mr. Bradley, well, he's turned out. I'm running against his wife, so. And that's a big contrast, but yeah, dealing with him on some things, I've saw some holes, Yeah.
How is that a contrast?
Well, I'd always research, running for office in these bigger elections, and they say you have to contrast your opponent. You have to show where you're different from your opponent, and that's the biggest difference. In this fact that my opponent is the senator's wife. I mean, he can't run by law, and I can't say what she's going to do or not going to do, but the law won't allow him to run again, so she's running. That's the big contrast, is that I'm fresh. I don't have any connections in Tallahassee. I don't know anybody, anything in Tallahassee. Now, them on the other hand, I mean, they've raised $1 million from Tallahassee. You got to ask yourself, they're going to be working for North Florida, or, are they going to be working for Tallahassee? So that's a big contrast, yes, sir.
Well, to touch on what Gary asked you and what you just said, I was doing some background information about something, and maybe you can speak to it.
Yes, sir.
So, and it went back, because I remember when I was on the board, one of the issues that legislators always had, especially from everybody that represented above I-4, was that all the representation of states below I-4.
Yes, sir.
Now in the House, that's really substantial.
Yes, sir.
In the Senate, there's 40 of them in the Senate.
Yes, sir.
If I tell it wrong, you let me know. But there was I counted it up today. And if you were to look, right now there's 17 senators above I-4 of the 40. Of the ones in Miami, Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach County, there's 12 just in them. In them, that bottom side of Florida.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
So that gives you 23 on the whole south end.
Right.
And then, so you got 17 people, right?
Yes, sir.
So I was looking at something. And maybe you know about it, you can speak to it. but I thought this was interesting. So there was a Senate bill, 1878, and it was titled Environmental Protection. So it was actually, and I found out, and I didn't know this when I was reading it, but it was actually sponsored by Mr. Bradley. And here's basically what it says. The environmental protection requiring, this was the bill that was presented, requiring a minimum annual appropriation for Everglades restoration and the protection of water resources in this state beginning in a specified fiscal year, specifying requirements for the allocation. And it can't be repealed except through reenactment by the legislature. And it went through appropriations. And so here was a summary, because you know, if you go on the website, and people don't know this, but if a bill comes up, you get to see everything about the bill, all the steps that the bill's been through. Then across the top of the column, it gives analysis, and then you get to see the reports by all the committees that reviewed it and all this thing.
Right.
So I went to that because I was curious exactly what did the bill mean.
Ties into a bunch of that U.S. sugar property.
And the money, right?
And the money.
So here's what the analysis
Follow
said.
that money.
Yeah.
All the money.
So here was the summary,
Right.
straight from the state's website. It says Senate Bill 1878 creates a new section of law that includes an annual appropriation beginning in the fiscal year 2021 of a minimum of $625 million for the purposes of Everglades restoration and the protection of water resources in the state. The appropriation would be repealed on June the 30th of 2023 unless reviewed and saved for repeal through enactment of Congress. That wasn't the part that got me. Here was the part that got me. This is part of the appropriations by the Act. A minimum of $236 million for Everglades projects in accordance with the Land Acquisition Trust Fund, $64 million for Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir Project, $50 million for springs and restorations in accordance with LATF. Oh, where's the rest of it? At the end, oh, here we go. $40 million for alternative water supplies or water conservation, which is an open book, right?
What the heck does that mean?
That's right, that's right. So a minimum of $25 million for projects within the watersheds of St. John's, Suwannee, and Apalachicola areas.
Give us
So,
a little bit. Just give us
Holy
a
shit,
dab up there in
of the
north.
whole 625, the minimum, $25 million.
Right.
And then the last one down here, it says a minimum of $50 million to the South Florida Water Management District for the design, engineering, and construction of aquifer storage and recovery wells.
And that was written by our.
District 5, State Senate.
Yeah, this is one of the problems that you get when you get lawyers. Sometimes I just think we're packed with a whole
We are.
line of lawyers, and we don't. You and I, we don't speak this.
We don't speak that.
We don't know what that 40 million is actually covered.
Now, it failed, just for the record.
Right, but he was pushing it. Brad was pushing it.
Yeah, so it died. No, that was something else that died. This one here died. It didn't make it. So, but that happened twice.
Right. Well,
That
and if you-
same bill was tried twice.
I looked at that too. And what's ironic is a lot of that money, if it would have went through, would have went to purchase property owned by U.S. Sugar south of Lake Okeechobee. And you know, if you go down there, I like that part of the country, but if you go to south of Okeechobee, and you keep going south, it's all sugarcane country. And you follow the donations into some of the big packs, some of these people I'm running against, you'll see where they poured money in there. Guess where? U.S. Sugar.
I thought it was interesting. But do you think it's relevant?
I think it is.
How so? I want to hear it from your perspective.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Well, it just shows you the motivation of the people that's supposed to be representing North Florida. And I know you got to work with other legislatures, but it seems like more about, they're working more for the big money industries in all of Florida than really trying to represent North Florida.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I worry about this. You know, I many times I've joked that, you know, Florida has a river that goes the opposite direction than most rivers in the world, right? It flows north. And we also have another distinction that all the northerners live down south and all the southerners live up north.
Mm-hmm.
We're just an odd kind of thing. Another thing though is we're rural.
Yes.
It's kind of like, you know, people wanting the sheriff to be, you know, the police department and the rural department. There are different needs for rural communities than there are for places like Miami, Tampa, Orlando. They have very different needs in those counties, very different needs in those communities than what you would have in what we live in. I mean, our communities are sparse comparatively. We have a lot of open spaces.
Yes.
And that mentality of buying up everything that doesn't play well here.
No, it's a totally different mindset on how our people in North Florida live compared to how they do it down south.
Has the leadership of the Republican Party reached out to you at all?
Well,
Ooh.
I think,
You know who I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
well,
The leadership over the House and
the
Senate.
girls, the girls that I've got helping me, they called the one boy Peter Rabbit. They said Peter Rabbit's helping the other people. I won't name any names, but that's what they called him. But yeah, we've run into that, you know, and you know, I guess being in politics before, and you can probably see the humor in this, that would have bothered me, you know, my first term as county commissioner, but you know, I get it. A lot of people want to follow the money. Hey, that's part of the game, and you know, hopefully we can be friends at some point.
Well, for me, the saddest part is that the public, actually the people
Right.
that elect you,
Yes, sir.
they know so little about what really goes on in the political environment. They
Yeah.
don't. Because they see the TV commercials, they see the money that's spent, because politics wraps around name recognition. So herein lies the rub. So based on what, and the reason I asked you if anybody from the Republican Party reached out to you or the leadership, because there's a reality, whether it's good or bad, here's a reality. If you get elected to the Senate, unless you can be appointed to the right committees, you can't represent District 5.
Mhm.
Now, that's reality, right?
Yes, sir.
So at the end of the day, so what happens is that people within the environment say, well, I've heard this on, especially on the House races. You hear it big time on House races because you have so many legislators. And the numbers of committees are the same. They mirror one another between the Senate and the House. The problem is you got so many people over here, you only got 40. So the odds of a senator that's unknown, not part of the establishment, being able to get onto a committee is a little bit better than a representative. They are going to struggle, right? Or if you get put on a committee, it usually is insequential and it don't do anything to really help you out politically, right?
Right.
So it's a tool that gets used to make politicians fall their ass in line with the party agenda. Right?
Exactly.
So how do you see, and I know this is a little bit of an arbitrary question, but how do you see you being able to overcome that? And not asking it because I don't think you can. I'm just wondering, I've certainly given it some thought. So I want to get some thoughts on it.
I have. Well, I think you got to go back and look, and you probably remember years ago, there was some state legislators that had a lot of power here in North Florida because they got on those committees. And they pretty much had a lot more authority than we've had in years. And I think you have to work at getting on the right committees. Now, That's part of the deal. You definitely have to use all of your authority to get on those committees.
Right, because you know the real struggle is, in my experiences,
Yes, sir.
if you're going to be an effective leader in your community, you have to be relevant. If you're a county commissioner, right,
Mhm.
and you're going to get anything done, you have to be relevant. Now, it might mean you're an asshole, but people got to be thinking, now what's Jason going to say if we say this? What's Jody going to say if we do this? Because you can't be effective if you can't be relevant.
Yes,
Now, everybody gets there based on their own personalities, right?
yes, sir.
For me, it was being informed.
Yes, sir.
At the local levels, it was easier to be relevant if you studied a little bit, because all of us at the table come from the same place.
Sure we do.
We might have different backgrounds, and our ability to research data or to be prepared for a meeting, that may change based on our life experiences or our skill sets.
Sure.
But when you go to the state level, that's different, because hell, all of them's lawyers just about it anymore, right?
Well, this is,
Yes,
in my book, that is a major problem throughout the whole damn country. The lawyers have, it's like, we don't need another lawyer.
Mhm.
No offense to lawyers out there, I'm sure, there are many, many great ones, but that lawyer speak, have you read a contract lately? I mean, you really,
Well, they make it where you gotta pay them.
oh my God, you can't even understand.
Yeah.
And I want to know why some guy up here is writing stuff for people down there. That's not necessarily sounding like the interest of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what it didn't say. And if you get elected, I hope one day you'll call me up and say, Jody, I got a damn answer for you. Everybody on your tax bill, you get a part of your tax bill here because it's Swanee River Water Management. Yeah, right?
That's true.
So I think there's 5 districts.
Yes, sir.
So now here's $625 damn dollars. $625 million minimum. It was a minimum.
Yeah.
Million.
Yeah.
Now, I can promise you the number's probably $1 billion had it passed.
Right, that was minimum.
Yeah. Where'd that money coming from? So I'm more concerned about, and it could be done the right way, I don't know. But if we're gonna put all that money into Everglades,
Right.
that's where all the representation is. Are we taxing the people down there that's using the damn Everglades to pay
Right.
for their own crap? Or is us up here in North Florida, are we paying to fix the Everglades?
Right.
And if so, what part are we contributing against what they're contributing?
Right.
Or is there some parity there? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question even on a federal level, how much taxes California pays compared to South Dakota, whatever. I mean, everybody has those answers. But I don't think that rural Florida is gonna do well on a bill like that.
Well, I'd like to look at that $60 and find out. I've often wondered as a county commissioner, because I always paid, I thought, more property taxes than anybody else I worked with as a commissioner, but what are we really getting for that $60? And that adds up to a lot of money when you got every property owner in the whole district paying that. And could we reduce that? I'd like to see it reduced if we could.
Mhm.
But going back to your earlier question, about being relevant in the committees, and I think you've seen it as a commissioner, I think what it's gonna take in the state legislatures, we're gonna have to get enough common sense people incorporated in the process, start getting rid of some of these attorneys, where we can have some common sense ideas.
I'm not even sure that even exists anymore.
Well, at the very least, have people that represent you who know where the hell you coming from.
Yes, sir.
They can identify with your issues. That's my biggest thing. All of them's good people at some level.
Right, they've got some good in
But
it.
how do you represent me if you don't know me? That's like going to church. I've always had this pet peeve about church. I don't like preachers.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, I don't like preachers who ain't never drank no liquor
Right,
or ain't never done nothing wrong. So how am I gonna sit in your church and you gonna preach to me? And this is only Jody's opinion. How am I supposed to receive what you saying if you don't have no life experiences that you talking to me from, right? And that's what I see, and I see in a lot of races, right, where it's like the grassroots of Florida or the country,
Right.
they're not represented no more. It's become a whole industry unto itself.
It's kind of like, go to your prison days, right? It's kind of like if you don't align yourself up with this group or that group, you're screwed.
Certainly seems
You're
that
either
way.
going to be over here or you're going to be over here. Who are you going to go? Because once those doors close, you're either going to be somebody's, or you're going to align yourself with one of those groups.
Well-
It's the same thing in politics, and it's sickening.
Well, in my race, it's a perfect example because you can see how my opponent, they went early, especially Columbia County, to a lot of big money people, and they got them on board early. And it's kind of, my race is kind of a grassroots against big money. So you've got the grassroots, I've got a lot of just common people helping me, getting the word out, just humble type people. Then most of my opposition, especially here in Columbia County, is the big money people, and I know there's some good people. I'm sure they're good Christian folks, but that's kind of the big contrast is mine's grassroots against big money.
Well, let's switch gears for a second. What's your thoughts on marijuana? Because we got this thing, right? And some of it is confusing to me because it's being spun by politicians so much anymore. I have dealt with several, actually, manufacturers, right? I did not grow up in the world of marijuana. It was taboo when I was little, so I wasn't around it, right?
Not so much for my world.
Yeah. But I've gone into facilities that are growing this crap, and it blew my mind. I've never seen so much dope in my life. Now I smelled it. I was around enough of it that but I never seen it. So now you got the CBD and you got all these things, right? So now you got the medical use. We can do it. Now the federal government, this is the one thing that struck me odd. If you're dealing with companies that are in that business, I have to be careful too because I have to sign non-disclosure agreements with every one of them. But they don't really pay you with a check because it's illegal with the feds. And all money that goes to a bank is FDIC. So therefore, the way you get paid in that world, nothing's illegal about it. It's just different, right?
Yes.
So what we have now, if I understand it right in Florida, is you got medical marijuana, if you got a doctor signed off on it, and they grow hemp and they do the CBD. There's no recreational stuff and all that kind of stuff. But what do you see, or what's your opinion about that particular substance?
Well,
You might want to disclose that you've worked at the prison system. So.
yeah, I've worked at the prison. I've been around it, working with the prisoners and whatnot. But I can tell you, my opponent, they was pro marijuana, and I think if you look at some of the contributions to their PAC, I think True Leaf was one of them, gave them a lot of money to help promote their initiative. And I think what I've seen through the whole marijuana deal is when people voted on it in Florida and passed it, they thought they were getting one thing, but I think you've seen the people in power, they've turned that and funneled that money through these certain companies so that certain people can make money. Now it's
It's big business.
It's a big business.
It's like the lotto, right? It's never
It's
as you
exactly
think.
like the lottery.
It's never, we're gonna help the schools, and then what do? They cut the general fund.
Yeah.
And, it's going straight to the schools, but then the politicians, and this is the problem I have, they never, ever give more money. It's always status quo. The schools look like crap still, the education's still the same, nothing changed. Just new money came in and old money gets put somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem I see with it. Now, and I understand, there's people out there dying, and, there's people dying every day that probably do need some help, some pain relief. I also have 3 young kids, 2 boys, 15 and 13, and I got a little girl at 12, and I don't have nowhere around them. I want to protect them. So, as a father, and to me, that's more important than anything else in the world, is being a husband and a father. I need to protect them, from.
I'll tell you the truth though, there's times I get home and eating time, I'm gonna go out. I don't recover like I once did. If I thought I could buy that crap and not go to jail or get caught by it, I believe I'd start smoking.
Well, here's a just.
I wish y'all make it legal right now.
Well, and I'm one of those believers that really do believe that there is help there with that. And I'm not talking recreational, because I grew up around it. I've seen people just get completely apathetic in their approach in life. I don't necessarily think it's a gateway thing. I've just seen people that were bright, smart, just go, I really just don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
I just think I'll sit here and talk.
I'll tell you though.
That's the reality. But I've also seen people with cancer. I've also seen people with AIDS that have been helped immensely put weight on themselves when they couldn't hold nothing down. And, I'm the last person to say, hey, I mean, with the crap that goes on with oxycodone, just because they've got the big L, illegal, and that scourge that has left its mark on our society, marijuana is the least of that.
Yeah. I tell you though, I think the truth behind it is this though, is that they can't make money off of it yet, and they ain't figured out
That's why they call it weed, man, and grow everywhere. Because
you can't regulate morality, and if you ever try that, then you're going the wrong way. But with that said, if it's all right for me to go down there to Jack's Liquor and buy me a 5th of rum, and I can drink it, and it's going to impair me, it's going to do all these things, then how do you justify one against the other? I think the truth is money.
Well, when's the last time you saw someone beat the hell out of their old lady or their kids being stoned versus you can go to any police department, any sheriff's office, and see a list of people that are drunk and just wail on people.
It's about money.
It's about money.
It's definitely about money. As long as you got attorneys in there, it's gonna be about money.
Yeah, so now let's moving on to the next thing, so we can get you to your next assignment. I'm gonna figure out how to frame this in a context that gives you the ability to talk about it based on who you are, right? But do you feel that the Senate has some responsibility and should or should not act on establishing something as it relates to law enforcement and the judicial for like training for law enforcement officers? We're hearing every day incidents where law enforcement, and I'm pro law enforcement, but
Me too.
But it's like you end up with this, and I don't know that this is the right answer. I'm just asking this question. So what happens is you end up with 67. That's probably not true. Probably more like 63 actually elected sheriffs in the state of Florida. Each one of them, in large part, have their own training programs, hiring protocols, all this stuff, right? So you got this law enforcement that they're enforcing one big block of rules, right? Yet it's a fragmented tool to get there. I don't know if I'm making sense. But at some point, should the laws of the land, or should the state should they play a role in trying to create continuity in the law enforcement community? I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense in the way I'm trying to frame it, but, because I don't think that it's local sheriffs, they're elected by the people. I don't think nobody should tell them how to do their job.
Right. I think I see what you're hinting at, and I've seen it. You'll have one sheriff, let's say in Swanee County, he may do something completely different than they do it in Dixie County or in Levy County or in Marion County. And you know, I support our law enforcement. I'm a former correctional officer. You know, we was talking earlier, I worked at Mayo CI and I worked at Cross City CI. And I took the crossover for law enforcement at Madison and North Florida Community College. So I want to support our law enforcement any way I can. But I also believe in the home rule thing like we have as county commissioners. I think home rule is a good thing too. So I believe continuity is good, but I wouldn't want to overburden them.
It's a fine line.
You have to keep the balance.
Yeah,
You want to see about it.
is there really a difference in, if you look at it the way people legislate down in the South? There, you were talking about, you know, common sense. Their common sense is different.
It is.
And once you start getting a consensus idea of how Florida should be, you're gonna lose your identity. And they're gonna lose theirs too, because it's gonna be a homogenized kind of a line of thought. And it's the same thing in drawing your bills, it's the same thing in every aspect. And it's sheriff's office, and the reason they call it an office is because he's accountable to the people that put him in that office. And so he has to, or she, Sadie Darnell, has to be able to run that department the way they see fit. And the reason because we have the US Constitution and we have our Constitution that are guidelines for every sheriff in the state to operate. I think that's enough. And then you have to have the leeway that that office gives for the differences in each community. I mean, we're different, vastly different than Suwannee County.
One thing you're hearing now on the news is, you know, people talk about defunding the police, defunding law enforcement. You know, I'm opposite of that. Hey, these men and women, they're out there protecting me. They're protecting my family. And even if I'm going too fast on the road, they're stopping me saying, hey, you need to slow down. That's for all of our safety. So I would never want to defund anyone, you know, and that's a big issue. So I'm pro law enforcement.
You know, the things that's going on in Portland and all of them right now, all that ransacking and all that stuff they're doing. Now, I can't even imagine how that would even begin to happen in rural Florida, for sure here. But it ain't got to be here. Let's say it's in Jacksonville or Miami or
You can't see it happening in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Or Tampa, for that matter. I mean, I could name several places I could see this could happen. But what should be the position? Because one of the things that bothered me about it, if I understand what's happening, is the local law enforcement has been called off and allowed, not peaceful protesters, but the non-peaceful protesters to do pretty much at their will and relative to violence, injuries to people and property. How could that happen here? And I have a reason I'm asking, but does the Senate and the House, does the state leadership have to look at how to make sure that can't happen here, and that Tampa, the local council in Tampa, we'll just pick on Tampa, they say, well, we won't let them go, so you'll leave them alone, right? How would, at the state level, at the Senate, what actions should be taken in that event?
I think, you know, there again, we've dealt with this on the county level, and I'm sure you have too. I think it's important, and it goes back to your first question, I think it's important that we give the law enforcement jurisdiction to do what they need to do. So they have the teeth and the ability to handle it, how they need to handle it, and we've got full faith in them, in our elected sheriffs, that they're gonna do it the way the people, the people elected them to enforce the law. So from the state legislative standpoint, we need to make sure the laws back up the sheriffs.
Well, this is why I lead it into that question. That was a leading question. In the state of Florida, the Ninth Judicial Court State Attorney in Orlando stated that her platform, and she's unopposed, she's going in as state attorney, will call for an end to cash bail, which would result in more defendants being released before trial. And that goes right back to the incident that happened down at Crossroads.
And it's been so successful up in New York.
Yeah,
It's
right.
Crazy.
She also says that incarceration should be the last resort, and I agree with that. And that those who do not pose a threat to the physical safety of others should not be placed behind bars. I see some relevance in that. But they went on to say that simple stuff, they weren't even going to prosecute it no more. And I'm thinking, here was the exact words. This come out of the prosecutor's mouth. We're not going to prosecute low-level drug offenses. We're not going to prosecute crimes that are an extension of someone being in poverty, basically. You know, we're going to look at the way that we prosecute crimes like prostitution, because so many times those things, those kind of crimes are related to poverty in some kind of way. Now, what little I know, the laws that are on the books and the sentencing guidelines that have been passed don't allow for them provisions. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but they don't. So how is it that a local attorney, state attorney's office, can make them statements? And is that even possible? And that's why I'm saying at some point, when do we go back and review our own laws that are on the books and try to shore up that everyone is treated fairly?
Why even have the laws?
I mean, right? So what's your thoughts about how the laws should be enforced? And I know you're running for senator and not a law enforcement job, but they actually do connect and they tell you something about the person, right?
Well, again, I believe in supporting our law enforcement, and I believe in giving our sheriffs the authority to have that discretion. And I learned that going through law enforcement training. You know, my discretion and your discretion might not be the same, but if we're acting in good faith, we need to use our judgment and our discretion. But in that particular instance, you know, how they handle things in South Florida is not necessarily how my Sheriff Dewey Hatcher is going to handle it in Dixie County, because he's enforcing the laws on the way he knows Dixie County wants it done. And I'm sure Sheriff Hunter would be the same way here in Columbia County. So I'm for, you know, letting them run their house the way they want to run it, and I'll support them any way I can.
You know, that's a kind of a good point there, because what she does is hobble the sheriff. What is that? That's Orange County, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she hobbles the law enforcement on what they're going to arrest people for. She's telling them
Right.
what their agenda is.
Well, that was the whole point
trumping-
too, because Portland's having the same problem. They're
Yeah,
being told
she's-
how to.
She's trumping because she's an elected official of a larger area, because they're not just one county usually. She's trumping another elected official called a sheriff and telling him what he's gonna do and not do.
Yeah, it goes back to, and I researched this as a commissioner because I was curious, how do we keep the balance? And when they formed the Constitution, you know, they had a separation of powers from judicial and legislative powers are separate. And it's supposed to be separate to keep it in balance. So we're not supposed to know what the judges are, we don't control how they sentence people. I mean, legislators give them guidelines, but we don't stay in their business. It's a separation of powers for a reason. And I think you see the sheriff's powers separated out also for a reason, because he's elected by the people.
Mhm. Well, I guess the last thing that we're gonna talk about then is you get elected senator.
Yes, sir.
What's some of your agendas and hopes and ambitions? What do you want to accomplish?
The main thing I'd like to do, number one, is do what we said we'd do. If Lord willing, we get to serve people in this capacity, we can go there and do 4 years and do what we said we'd do. I'm happy with that. But what we're saying we're going to do is, number one, stay in touch with people. And when an issue comes up in Columbia County that's going to affect your way of life, I'm going to look at people like y'all here in this room and say, hey, how do y'all feel about it? And then I want to bring that back to Tallahassee. And even though they might not see it, they probably won't. I'm going to make sure they hear how we do it here in North Florida. And, just sitting here talking with you, I know that me and you do, and that we both worked at the prisons. We've been, I think me and you have a lot more in common than you would with the Bradleys, but it's doing what we said we'd do. And then having the backbone to stand up for what's right, because again, when you get in these offices, people will try to sway you and pull you. They'll use all kind of temptations, and it's about doing what's right. And hey, I want to be able to hold my head up high. If I only serve one term, say, hey, we did what was right, and we did what we said we was going to do. When somebody called, hey, we called them back, and we was there to help people.
I didn't read anywhere here that, on your opinion of, unless I missed it, the Second Amendment,
Yes, on there. I'm a defender of the Second Amendment.
council law. Are you for that? Because people are trying to take that away, being able to defend your own.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Now, your current state senators, they voted for Senate Bill 7026, which is anti-gun legislation. I'd like to see that repealed. And they changed the law here in Florida from where you used to be 18 to buy a gun, now you have to be 21. They changed your law from 18 to 21. That's anti-gun legislation, and that just rubs me the wrong way. Rubs a lot of people the wrong way here in North Florida. So I want to change that. And I'm for open carry. I'd love to see, to me, I have a concealed permit. I like to carry my gun everywhere I can legally. I'd love to see open carry.
I feel totally safe too. It's kind of strange like that.
Yeah, and I believe in my heart, the more citizens, law-abiding citizens we have carrying firearms, the safer we all are as society. So that's my thing on the Second Amendment. Now, one thing I'm getting hit with from my opposition, they say, well, you've only been a Republican for a couple years, and that's true. I was a Democrat when I registered at 18 because you had to be to vote in local elections. I mean, everybody was a Democrat in Dixie County, and I'm sure it was that way.
Columbia County too.
Forever, when I came here, there was still a lot of,
Yep, so I got elected as a Democrat, so when I realized I wasn't gonna run again, I went ahead and changed. I didn't want to change because I got elected as a Democrat. I wanted to be a Democrat commissioner as long as I was in there, but I was conservative, and I was probably the most conservative county commissioner we had, in my opinion. But that's kind of my views. I'm pro law enforcement. I'm pro Trump. I'm for lower taxes. I mean, I support our veterans, our first responders. I'm a family guy. I'm about helping people, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Well, one quick question about smaller government. I knew that where somebody had tried to change in environmental stuff to where they was going to move investigative duties from game and fish, certain parts of their investigative responsibility was going to move to DEP. They were creating a new law enforcement agency inside of DEP. That's the most asinine thing I've heard of in my life.
Right.
I don't know why, but what they were
That
doing.
goes against smaller government.
Yeah, but you know, going back real quick about being a county commissioner, I don't know if this was your experience, but it's mine. You be in a boardroom talking, right?
Yes, sir.
And you could have, you going through the agenda. And on this part of the agenda, the county manager, or whatever y'all call him, wherever county you come from, he says, we need to buy a new loader tire for that old loader we got out there at Public Works. It's $2,800. They sit there in the boardroom, you might talk about that tire for an hour, $2,800 tire. The very next thing on the agenda was, we need to approve a $4.5 million loan for fire services.
Done.
15 seconds. Because people can only
Yeah.
communicate about the things they understand.
Well, and people are emotional. We're all emotional people.
Yep. Well, it's the end of the day. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
your time.